Have you ever felt?
Are you listening?
Hey YouTube, it's Piper. I'm going to be doing the review of the OG Roswell and the third episode of the rebooted Roswell, New Mexico. This third episode is not going to be as long of a recap or review as the other ones were, because I know the third episode from the original Roswell, I know that one like the back of my hand. I literally have probably seen it 100,000 times. The third episode of the new Roswell, New Mexico, I also don't really need to recap that one for too long because not a lot happened in this episode. It almost seemed like a filler episode, so I didn't have much to go over, and you'll learn my thoughts on that and why that is in just a second. The third episode of the OG Roswell was called Monsters. That's the title. And just so that you know, the new school Roswell, which is called Roswell, New Mexico, is on the CW every Tuesday night, 9/8 Central. I'm not going to put the date in there because I always get it wrong no matter what I try to do. But OG Roswell, Monsters is the third episode. And in that episode, everybody who needs to know pretty much knows that Max and Michael and Isabel are aliens. And so right now that only includes Liz, obviously, and Maria. So Liz and Maria have been talking about it regularly. This episode kind of is interesting because if you are a kid who was a teenager back then, like I was a teenager back then you will know that this episode kind of starts with Maria sees Isabel like stranded on the side of the road, and she's listening to Genie in a Bottle by Christina Aguilera, and it's so funny because I'm like, dang, that takes me back. She pulls over and asks Isabel if she wants a ride. Or no, what she says to her is going home, because there's this huge spaceship sort of decal on the tow truck, and Isabel's standing out there waiting for this tow truck to load up her mom's car. And because Maria is eccentric and hilarious, she sees it and she looks out at the window and she's like, going home? Ha ha, funny, funny. It's a spaceship. She's an alien, you get it. Isabel is thinking she's being helpful, and so she ends up trying to like make Maria's air conditioner work a little better on her car. So she uses her, alien powers and like fixes it so the air blows all cold. And Maria's freaking out because she's never really witnessed them actually using their abilities. And I think this is the first time she really, kind of is seeing them for what they really are. So it freaks her out. She's like, don't do that. And Maria ends up running into the back of a car. And lo and behold, that car is Sheriff Valenti. So that sucks. So her and Isabel are kind of skittish because it's the first time with either one of them really dealing with Sheriff Valenti in kind of that capacity. Even though Isabel did deal with him when she had him fix her flat tire, but it was just a little bit different. So we go back to the school. And now everybody knows that Miss Topolsky is not actually a substitute, but she is guidance counselor for the school. So she's told Liz that she's worried that Michael is going to be flunking out, and so she really wants to talk to Michael. So now Mr. Polsky is evaluating what they want to be in life. And so you see her meet with everybody, and Liz is all obviously wanting to be something having to do with, she wants to be some scientist, something. And then we have Isabel, who says she's like, wants to be a model because she wants to work with her God-given gift. And I'm like, again, is her beauty like alien? Because how is it that her looks just get her in places? And I'm like, she's not like overtly cute, like, whoa. So it's kind of weird to me. I'm like, they must play that up for some reason. So then Max goes in there, and it's funny because Max is asked what he wants to do, and I don't believe Max really knows what he wants to do. Ms. Topolsky kind of floats the idea to Max that maybe he should, do something that is out of the norm for him. So that's talk to somebody he hasn't talked to before, maybe like open up to a cute girl or something like that. So then Maria approaches Liz, and she's frustrated, and she's asking Liz, hey, can you have Max talk to Isabel and keep her from doing alien things around me because she was freaking me out and made my air conditioner blow like a tsunami. And I'm like, calm down, it wasn't that serious. So then Liz ends up talking to Max, and Max is trying to get up the courage to like really kind of open up to her more than he ever has. And you see this chemistry with them, and it's kind of an awkward little moment, but it's really cute for what it was and the time that it set in. So then Maria ends up having like all these little interactions with Sheriff Valenti. He shows up at the crash down and he wants a drink or something, and she's like, you want that to go? And she's like offering that right off the bat when he's like, I might have wanted it here, but she's like, you need it to go, let's have it to go. So Isabel, because the crash down is like the hangout for every teenager, she's there when that happens, and she's looking at Maria like, man, you're gonna crack and he's gonna find out about us. But in reality, I think it's so weird that they think that Sheriff Valenti will ever find out. Because it's like, why would that ever be what the conclusion he jumps to? Like, normal kid, maybe he saved Liz from a bullet wound, maybe he has a sister, but he knows that Max is adopted, so why does he think that Isabel is the same exact whatever Max is? You know, it's just weird. But because this is TV, you have to suspend disbelief for a second. So they get worried that maybe Maria is just not strong enough to hold their secret and she's going to end up telling Valenti. So they kind of think that intimidation is the best way, or at least Isabel thinks that, because she thinks if she keeps Maria on her toes, then maybe she will not be likely to tell because she won't know what they will do to her if she does tell. Max is like, don't do that. Just like try to relate to her somehow, which is hard for Isabel because again, she's more popular and she's kind of like this beauty queen of school. So the idea that she would talk to Maria, who's not necessarily on her same level, is kind of like ridiculous to her. This is also the episode where we see Max end up going into the UFO center. And this, I believe, is the first time he's ever been in there because Maria ends up being so skittish and so freaked out that she ends up shortchanging this woman when she's checking her out at the crash down, and then the woman goes across the street to the UFO center because it just is conveniently located right across the street from the crash down. Max just offers to go take this woman the money that she shorted her, and that's how he gets introduced to the UFO center, where he eventually ends up working, and we meet his boss. I think his name is Milton, and Milton kind of thinks that I'm always interrupted by something. Shut up, text message. So Milton ends up deciding like, oh, Max has a thirst for knowledge just like he has a thirst for knowledge on the aliens, and Milton's sort of this like conspiracy theory nut. So he's excited that Max seems to be just like him, and he tells Max, you know, like, you remind me of myself. So Max decides, I guess, for some reason to take a job there. And I think it's just so that he can learn more about the 1947 crash, and so it'll kind of answer his questions, but not outwardly make him seem suspicious, even though I'm like, why would anybody think you're an alien? Because you're interested in the one thing Roswell's known for. So then Sheriff Valenti tells Maria that he needs to exchange like insurance information and stuff with her, and I'm thinking, didn't you do that when you got in the accident? Why do you need to do it later on at the crash down and be so informal? But he sets up a meeting with Maria. Everybody's really worried. They talk to Liz, and Liz is like, you know, you can totally trust Maria. She's very, you know, reliable, and she's very much, you know, like a steel trap or whatever. They use some term, but I'm not going to go look it up. Then Isabel decides she's going to go take a little dream walk into Maria's dreams. It's really interesting. I like how they make it that Isabel does this thing where she can like look at somebody's picture and get into their subconscious, or I guess into their dreaming mind, which is weird because I'm like, how did she know Maria was sleeping at that time? Because she says in later episodes that she needs to like know when someone's not awake. But I'm like, how do you ever know? And several times in this series she does stuff like that, and I'm like, how did you know they were sleeping? But for whatever reason, it's TV and we have to believe, oh yeah, she knows exactly what time Maria goes to bed. So she goes into Maria's dream, and you see Maria, like, kind of her nightmare is that Liz is just so cool with all of this alien stuff. Then she ends up being, like, freaked out by it, and then you have Sheriff Valenti sitting in this, like, slide corner in this table. If you're into dream interpretation, it just seems like Maria's just really overwhelmed with all of this alien stuff and the secrecy behind it, and she's so scared because she just doesn't know enough about these aliens. So Isabel pops into her dream, and she's watching this scene. Maria, in her dream, notices that Isabel is there in the dream and in like sort of reality and dream reality. She's there too. And Isabel tells her like, hey, I just wanted to see if you would crack and tell Valenti our secret. Then you see Isabel's looking around Maria's dream, and you see Michael sitting off to the side at a table by himself, fully in a tuxedo. And she's like, that's interesting, which I would have been like that too. I'd been like, why did you envision him in a tux? And then in her dream, Maria is envisioning Isabel and Max as like painted green faces and like green hair, like more alien-esque, while Michael is slicked back hair and a tuxedo. And she's like, oh, that just makes me feel better when I see him like that. I'm like, that was just a little bit of like an Easter egg in that one, because you kind of see like, oh, Maria's attracted to Michael, and so she likes him in a tux. And well, I guess the way dreams do, people turn into things in dreams. I'm sure you've had a dream. So you see him, and he suddenly gets these big, like a lobster claw type of hand, and or lobster claw. Why can't I think of the word? Lobster claw. He gets a lobster claw sort of hand, and he like wraps his long tentacle around Maria's neck, and he just ends up looking like a really big praying mantis, even though he's supposed to, I guess, be what she thinks an alien looks like. And so Maria gets freaked out, and so she suddenly starts yelling for the sheriff in her dream and saying, sheriff, you gotta help me, they're aliens. And so Maria is basically still just really not sure of Max and Isabel and Michael. I mean, she knows they're aliens, but she's not sure of their powers. She just doesn't know. And she is outwardly a lot more affected by that than Liz ever comes off to be. So then Isabel ends up talking to Maria, and she kind of finds a way to bond with her, and we're basically talking about their moms. Maria, I think, tells Isabel something about what her mom does for a living, and then Isabel's like, yeah, you're right, moms do stupid things. And then Maria's like, does she know? And she's like, does my mom know she does stupid things? She's like, no. Does she know your secret? And Isabel's like, no, she doesn't. And so I think that really helps Maria sympathize with Isabel, because then she starts thinking like, wow, it must be horrible being you. You have a mom that you love so much, and you can't open up and tell her something so serious. So the sheriff, anyways, is playing on Maria's sort of real skittish nature, and to basically get her to crack. And Maria's kind of had it up to here with everybody. And he's telling her things like, you can always come to me, and, messing with her psychologically. And so Maria ends up going into Sheriff Valenti, and she talks to him. And then something in her clicks, and she's like crying. She's emoting. She's scared. She's a teenage girl in the sheriff's office. And I think it's weird, because I'm like, she's not 18. You're supposed to have her mother there while you're questioning her. Why would you ever do this alone? But she just eventually says, Isabel is a good girl. She's a good girl, and we wouldn't want anybody to get hurt. And that's not exactly the words, but basically she's just like, look, bro, I don't have any information to give you, and even if I did, I'm not going to tell you. And so it just kind of strengthens her and sturdies her backbone. And so she's leaving the sheriff's office, and I guess that's when she finally sees Isabel. And once again, even though Isabel's car was fixed, she's off to the side of the road, her car broke down. Then Maria's like, do you need a ride? They end up having a very sweet moment, because you realize she's like, you lied to the sheriff, and she's like a rug. And then for some reason, they go back to school. I'm like, dang, how long is your school day? You've been to pick your car up, visit the sheriff and everything. You go back to school and everybody's still there. Like, damn, you guys have 27 hours in your high school. They end up going back to the school, and everything's cool. Everybody realizes that Maria lied, and so Michael and Max and Isabel, Michael, Max, and Isabel go off together. And then you have Maria and Liz kind of hugs Maria, and it's like, yeah, they just have this moment of solidarity. They're like, alien squad, we all know an alien. But that's basically where that episode is ending. So we have Roswell, the original, and Roswell, New Mexico. Let me just start out by saying that Roswell, New Mexico, as soon as I saw the title for this episode, I kept thinking of NSYNC. And for whatever reason, I couldn't stop humming in my head, "It's Tearing Up My Heart." That's from my era. I used to love NSYNC. I'm talking go to concerts, swoon almost over Justin and Lance. I really liked Lance, but good thing I did not let that crush get away with me. You go to Tearing Up My Heart. Now, a couple of observations I want to make about Roswell, New Mexico before I get started with the recap. I think where Roswell, New Mexico really suffers, because I've been worrying about this, or not worried, but I've been wondering about this the whole time that I've been watching this season. And I'm like, why am I not attaching to this? Is it because I still love the OG Roswell, or is it because there's something about this one genuinely? I actually was really happy about them rebooting Roswell. When they rebooted Charmed, I wasn't happy about it. I kind of felt like it was too soon to reboot Charmed. But Roswell, I was so on board and really wanted to see what another producer or executive producer could do with it. One thing that I think is just severely lacking with this new Roswell, it's that when you watch this new Roswell, even though they really have tried to distinguish it from the OG, is that the OG Roswell did a really good job mixing intrigue and the fantastical side of everything. They built up, this intrigue of their aliens and you want to know more about their alien stuff. But it was also very character development heavy in the beginning. Whereas this new Roswell is, even though it's supposed to be separate, they're acting under the idea that you already love these characters without introducing us to these characters. We don't have a good handle on any of their emotions. We don't have any reason to root for any of them specifically. And I think that's why they added such a political and social issue kind of hot button, because they did that with Charmed too, and this is what Charmed, the reboot, is lacking as well, is that they are hoping that people love the original so much that they will just love these characters blindly. And at least Charmed didn't name them the same names, and so you can distinguish it a little bit as another show. But Roswell does have, for all intents and purposes, Roswell, New Mexico does have the same characters. They're just older. There's just not enough character development. We don't care about Liz. We don't care about Max. We don't care what happened to Liz. We don't care what happened to Max. And as a writer, I know a lot about character development and why that's so important. So this episode, right off the bat, we learned some stuff about Liz through her narration. Her mom didn't die or anything. Apparently she just left the family. And then we see Liz and she's saying to herself that she's a scientist and she believes in hard facts. So she's kind of listing all these facts and everything. And then at the end of that, she says her hypothesis is Max killed Rosa. And I'm just like, how did you jump to that as a hypothesis? You know that there are 3 aliens, so why is it that you think that Max specifically killed Rosa? If Rosa was killed, then Rosa has other stuff going on, or Rosa was into stuff. So we know that Rosa was definitely part of more than just, what we all know. So it's like, you really think Max of all people killed her? Like, you saw into his soul, you felt his feelings, but you think he's a murderer? So this Liz is so ruthless, and she's basically like, I'm gonna get to him, I'm gonna learn a lot about him, I'm gonna learn how his powers work, and I'm gonna figure out what happened to my sister. And she's not nonchalant about it at all. She's like, drives up to Max's house with all her little equipment, and she's basically like, strip buddy, I'm about to take you apart, basically. I mean, she just treats him like a experiment. And so he tells her about them drinking nail polish, I'm assuming, because we flash to a scene of her, not necessarily flash to it, but they're talking about it. And she's like, it has healing properties. And he's like, well, we don't heal fast or anything. It just helps us. And I'm just like, okay, that's so weird. We'll touch that in a second. Trust me. So she's trying to basically get Max to somehow exhibit his abilities to her. She wants to see how they work. So she's purposefully needling him to see what happens. And I love Nathan Parsons so much. He's super cute. The dude needs a little bit of a tan because he took off his shirt, and I was like, bro, gotta wear some shades. But his shirt was off, so I was cool. Okay, let's see. I could barely hear what he was saying when I was looking at his shirtless body. Ooh, I can't hear you, Nathan Parsons. But he needs a little tan. She goes out to him and she's putting these heart monitors on him, and I guess his heart rate speeds up while she's applying them. Or she says to him, your heart's racing, you don't have to be afraid of me. And he's like, it's not because I'm afraid of you. In my head, I kept thinking he was going to say something like, it's because I'm happy to see you. I just kept thinking boner. The whole time I'm watching that, I'm just thinking about him popping wood. That's so weird and so inappropriate. Kids, turn away. I'm sure kids don't watch me. So he tells her, no, it's not because I'm scared of you. It's because I like you a lot. So he doesn't say that, but that's what I envisioned him saying. And then we have Master Sergeant Jesse Maines. And I think that's their last name. In the second episode, they were calling them Mans, or at least somebody said that, but now it's Maines. So Master Sergeant Jesse Maines is Alex Maines' dad. So Master Sergeant Jesse Maines is talking to Dr. Kyle. or Michael Trevino. So they are really good together. They are some great actors. And so we discover that he's the one that gave Kyle Rosa's real autopsy report. For whatever reason, he had it. And so now he's kind of like intimidating Kyle, telling him, basically you owe me, I gave you that, now you need to do something for me. Like, I scratched your back, you scratched mine. Kyle is still steadfast, and he's not telling him who he saw the handprint on, because he doesn't want to out Liz. And we learned that Kyle's dad's name was Jim, so he was Jim Valenti. Even though Sheriff Valenti is a woman now, Jim Valenti was still his dad, so that name stayed. Max ends up being needled to the point that he's flustered enough to get out of control with his powers. Unfortunately, Isabel walks in, because she walks into everybody's house, and she sees Max with Liz, and she's kind of curious as to what's going on. Liz ends up leaving at some point, and then Isabel is sitting there with Max, and then the jerk that she is, she sits there and basically is telling him, like, bro, she's just not that into you. Why are you still looking like, this idiot chasing her around when you know she don't want you? Like, you need to move on from this. This is not good for you. And then she's like, just so you know, even while your handprint was still on her, she was at the Wild Pony. That's such a weird name, but I guess the bar that Maria works at is the Wild Pony. And so she tells him, like, hey, when your hand mark was still on her, she was at the Wild Pony with Kyle Valenti, and they were like macking down in his car. So of course Max was like, you could have not told me that. That'd have been great. Then we learn a piece of shocking news that makes me want to throw the whole show away. And that Liz absolutely did tell Kyle about Max being an alien. I don't know if she told him about all of them, but she definitely told Kyle about Max being an alien. And I was like, you mean Kyle was the first person she told? All I kept seeing is my boot to her face at that point. I'm like, this is nothing like the relationship that I wanted her to have with Maria. They're basically not even friends. And I'm just going to spoiler alert this and tell you that they weren't. Apparently, Rosa and Maria were close, but she somehow was cool with Liz, but not as cool with Liz as Rosa was with Maria. And I'm like, so they're not even best friends? Like, what's the point? So you really are going to do what I think you're going to do to Heather Hemmons in this. You're just going to downplay her character altogether. She's just not going to have that big of a role. Awesome. And we learned that Kyle has a little bit of a Napoleon complex because he asks Liz, even though Liz has not shown any like warm fuzzy feelings for Max, he's like, is it because he's tall? And I'm like, little man syndrome. Like, first of all, Michael Trevino, you can get it too. You don't have to be tall. Anyway, on the show, him as Kyle, basically he's got a little inferiority complex because, Max is an alien and he's tall and he's short, and so he's kind of like needling Liz because Liz is saying that she's not sure or that Rosa could have done anything that would have pushed Max to use his abilities against her. And Kyle is like, he's not the puppy dog you think he is. Like, he could do harm. And Liz is like, I just don't know yet. I'm like, you might as well say you think so, because you said in your little beginning hypothesis that you absolutely thought he killed Rosa, so you didn't even think or question that it could have been somebody else. You immediately went to, it must have been Max. Like, okay. Then, of course, am I rolling my eyes hard enough for you to hear it yet? This show goes and we see a post-coital Alex and Michael, and that's not where I'm irritated. I'm irritated because of the fact that it's just not, the show just, it doesn't fit. It's like this weird thing that I'm still not altogether sure why they went this route, but whatever. We're post-coital with Alex and Michael, and that's cool because Michael's body is dope. I'm all for it, so I can't stop staring, so it's all right. But Isabel pops up there too because she just be popping up everywhere uninvited. I'm like, man, she is like the OG cop block. Like, she's everywhere. She's like destroying relationships left and right, keeping everybody celibate. But they'd already got it in. Anyway, Alex is like freaking out. He's like, she knows about us? And Michael's like, would it be so bad? And Alex basically is like, yeah. And in my head, there is this meme. And I will post it somewhere around here, this meme, because I posted it on my Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen it. And that's exactly what it looks like when Alex is like, it's like he's regretting it. He's going to do the walk of shame. He's done with this. Michael obviously gets a little butthurt and he's like, don't worry about it, Alex. I'll go out there and talk to her. So Isabel tells Michael Liz is like doing all sorts of experimentation on Max and he's playing into her hand, and just because he loves her, he's like letting her do all this stuff and exploit him. And Michael's like, well, how long is it going to take before you go into her mind and force her to leave? And I'm like, why do you have that ability? Like, what is that ability? And I don't know if Isabel in the book had that ability, because in the books there wasn't a test. And so in the OG Roswell, there was a test, and so she had an ability that was similar to this. So I'm thinking maybe that's why they give it to Isabel in this. I don't know, because I didn't read the book series. Isabel's ultimate desire is to have Liz go away, get away from Max. She's very protective of Max, almost to the incestuous kind of level. And I'm like, well, she was like that in the OG Roswell too, so okay. It's really odd to me because Liz goes around town and she's finding all these little hidey holes. Nope, not hidey holes. Hidey holes. And that's what she calls them, hidey holes of her sister Rosa's. And so Rosa, I guess, would hide little different things here and there and leave clues. And I'm like, why would she do that? And I guess it's a drug addict thing because everybody seems to think that that was all Rosa was about. So I'm like, maybe they just think that. But it's weird because 10 years has passed. It's not like 5 years has passed. And so it's been like a subject people don't broach. I mean, Liz has moved all the way away in 10 years. Like, all this stuff has happened. So it's really weird that they are approaching it like literally Rosa's death just kind of made everybody stand still and nobody progressed, nobody talked about it. Liz never muttered a word about her sister passing until 10 years later. And I know people mourn differently, but this is almost an unbelievable level of they just didn't even ever broach the conversation in 10 whole years. Like, she missed every Christmas, New Year's, what, nothing? She didn't come around for, Dia de los Muertos? Like, she didn't come around for that? But I'm just saying, it's weird that everything seemed to stand still. Even places that her sister hid stuff still exist. And I'm like, really, after 10 years, there wasn't a strong enough storm to blow this stuff away or anything? Because it's like all around town. It's not just like at her house. If it was at her house, I'd understand, but it's like everywhere in town. And apparently, Rosa frequented the bar quite a bit as a teenager because she's hidden stuff in the bar that Maria works at, too. They go looking for it, and poor Max, poor Nathan Parsons. In the last episode that I recapped, I told you about the little thumb drive he got from Deputy Freya, and Deputy Freya handed it to him to look at the surveillance footage of what happened at the crash down the night that Liz was shot. And so he picks up this 1985 version of a laptop, and it's really clunky and weird, and puts it on top of his desk, and he plugs the thumb drive into there. But on his desk is a whole desktop computer, and a nice one. And I'm like, dude, use that. Why do you have this other laptop? But anyway, so he's sitting at his desk. He's pounding on his computer, his desktop computer. And I'm like, technology thwarts Max Evans once again. He just can't get technology right in this whole show. I'm like, man, maybe he just doesn't know what a desktop computer is for. I don't know. It's weird. And I guess Max has decided that he's going to try to have some very lackluster relationship with Deputy Kim. And so he's like, hey, we should go out. And she's like, what? She's like, dude, you are a bed buddy. I hit it and quit it. That's not what she said, but you know what I'm going to say. So she basically is like that. And he's like, no, let's take this to another level. And so she's like, okay, but she doesn't look too excited about taking their bedroom relationship into the streets. So he invites her to some thing. They do some drive-in movie night thing to raise money and something like that. So Liz and Maria go on a very chemistry-less scavenger hunt around town to find more of Rosa's hidey holes. So I also think that the way that you say Liz's last name is Liz Orteco. Orteco is what it is. Orteco, because Sheriff Valenti calls them Orteco. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's Orteco or Orteco. I don't know. Maybe that's why they changed it in the OG one. They didn't want people stumbling over how to say it, and none of the actors say it the same on any episode. So her and Maria are going around, and of course they're just treating Maria like the token Negro of the show, like they do on every CW show. She gets no meaningful moments. She's not going to have any meaningful interactions. She's just basically there to help everybody else out. So she goes on this little scavenger hunt around the city to find stuff that Rosa hid somewhere. Okay, Maria tells Liz this interesting story because Liz finds this little love letter sort of thing that Rosa was obviously hiding somewhere in the city. One thing Maria mentions that I'm like, what? She says one time while she was spending the night for a week at Liz's house, and I'm like, you stayed at their house for a week? What kind of backstory do you have where you could sleep over at your friend's house for a whole week? But I'm like, it's a small town. Maybe like that's what happens. But I somehow think they were going to set her up with a very not supportive family. I don't know. I'm really seeing like some of these red flags are popping up, and I'm kind of knowing where the story's going to go and where it's going. I'm not a fan of, so I'm hoping to God that I'm wrong. Come on, Julie Plec, give me some faith in you. So Isabel's husband Noah is good looking, just like Adam Rodriguez in the original. We have Noah in this one, and Noah is hot. Every Isabel marries a hot dude, and they are into some kinky fuckery because, and I'm stealing that from Anastasia Steele of 50 Shades of Grey. I didn't like 50 Shades of Grey, not the book or really the movies, but I think they're into some stuff because Noah tells Isabel that he wants some alone time with just her. And she's like, really? Who do you want me to be? And he's like, shake it easy, horn bucket. I just wanted to see if we could spend some time of you and me. You don't need to have a costume on. And she kind of looks at him like, not as fun as dressing up, Daddy, but okay. That's how I see it. So Kyle doesn't break into the sheriff's department because his mom's a sheriff, so I think he has keys. But what he does is he breaks into, I guess, their filing room, and he's like getting some information because he's taking pictures of stuff. And I think it's just information on Max, or maybe the crash down and the shooting, or maybe on Rosa's death. I don't know. And then as he's coming out, he runs right into Max, and so they have a pissing match because it's like he starts talking like to him, and like Max is getting upset with him, and I guess he kind of grabs him up, and then Kyle is like, "Oh yeah, what, you mad because you heard about me and Liz getting some on at the Wild Pony?" And I guess a little like electric box or maybe electric wire kind of sparks, and then Kyle looks at it like, oh no. And I'm like, that's not scary. I'm not into the effects, the special effects in this one. I'm just like, less was more in the 1999 one. Like, less was more. And on this one, it's like, they love excess, and that's just weird. Kyle just kind of blows that off, and then Deputy Freya pops up, and she's like, do we have a problem here? And I'm like, why is Deputy Freya, like, always in the mix of, like, crazy, weird, testosterone-fueled arguments? Like, she did that with Wyatt Long in the second episode, and she's like that now. Anyway, Kyle takes off once she shows up, and Max is like, great, our date that I don't want to go on. Okay, so at this drive-in thing, we finally see a scene between Alex Maines and his dad, Master Sergeant Jesse Maines. And I'm like, finally, we got a lot of the two of them separately, but never together. And we discover that he doesn't have a problem with Alex being gay so much as he has a problem with Alex's choice in men, which is, you guessed it, it's Michael Guerin. He doesn't like Michael Guerin. He's thinking Michael is kind of like a grade A loser. He's not going anywhere, and so he's just not a fan of Michael specifically. So I am happy that that got cleared up, because I was going to think it was going to be way too cliche to have him just like not cool with him being gay. But no, he's fine with him being gay. Of course, that makes Alex start thinking like, you're right, Dad. Even though he doesn't say that, his wheels are turning. And so then, of course, he magically comes upon Michael while Michael is doing his side hustle of selling copper wire or copper piping or something to make a little extra cash. And then he like shames Michael for his hustle. And I'm like, hey, he's making his money. Like, but he's like, you're the type of guy I don't want. One thing I think is hilarious is Sheriff Valenti, the woman. And I always say the woman because if you liked the OG, then you are like me and don't recognize that name to go with a woman. But Sheriff Valenti, the woman, shows up at the drive-in thing, and she comes up on Kyle and totally full names Kyle. I did like the fact that Kyle and his mom were in a scene together finally. And I also didn't know that he was an immigrant too. I was like, okay, cool. So your family was an immigrant, but they immigrated the right way, and then they believe, or his mom believes, that the Orticos did not immigrate the right way. And so she's like, they give us all a bad name and make life harder. That's what she thinks, not what I personally think. That's what she said. But she comes up and is like, Cayo Manuel Valenti, and gets on his case for stealing the key to her office. And then she mentioned something to him along the lines of that Jesse, or Sergeant Jesse Maines, was never friends with his dad. And so what Jesse Maines has been kind of selling this to Kyle like they were friends, and it's his duty to get involved in this Project Shepherd thing that's going on. But, Kyle's been resistant. But then when his mom says that and drops that little bomb, he's really taken aback, and he's like, so they weren't even friends, so he feels like he's being played. Isabel, I guess, can do what Tess in the OG Roswell could do, and she mind warps people. It's not the same, though. What she does is, it's her way of, controlling them. It's almost like compulsion for a vampire. It's kind of like that. But she goes into their mind. So she tries to do that to Liz. Side note, Liz smokes a little weed in this. She smokes some weed with Maria in this one. I'm like, wow, not as straight-laced as the first Liz. But she's in Liz's mind, or she thinks she is, but then she keeps seeing flashes of Rosa. And it's interesting because Rosa keeps saying, oh, I thought we were friends. And then she's like, Rosa? And then it flashes back to being Liz, and then she's trying to convince Liz to leave. And then Liz is like, I can't leave. And Isabella's like, what's so important here? And Liz's subconscious or whatever is like, Max. Can you hear my eyes rolling? I don't know what they are going to be able to do to show more chemistry, but they got to get me invested in these characters for me to keep rooting for them. After this mind warp, Isabel gets sick to her stomach, and so she must run off to go puke behind a car. And who comes over to save the day with your favorite beverage? Michael. He pops up and he's like, nail polish remover. And she's like, thank you. Takes it back like a shot. I'm like, that's so weird. Don't people notice you guys buy a lot of nail polish remover? So then Liz and Maria, they're smoking their wacky tobacco, and not even weed can make Liz more interesting, because during her smoking, she's talking about the fact that she left a fiance in California. She just took off. His name was something like Pedro, or I don't know what it was, but it wasn't all great. So she leaves, and she's has some weird vision, or I guess something dawns over her face that she realizes where Rosa probably hid something. Again, for 10 years it's been just outside at this movie theater, but she finds it. She opens the little thing and she sees this love letter, and in this love letter it says love Max at the end. So it was from Max professing his love to what Liz thinks is her sister. And so Liz, being upset, goes and takes a page out of Isabel's book and does the cock block thing, because Max is in a car necking and making out with Deputy Freya. And then she pops up like, not today, Maxwell. You need to come over here and tell me why in the world you were with my sister. And she's like, you slept with my sister. And Max is like, I don't sleep with your sister. And so then she's like, yeah, you did. You wrote her this love letter, when you touch my lips, blah, blah, blah. And then Max is like, oh, man. So finally Max admits that letter was not for Rosa. It was for you. She just so happened to intercept me when I was leaving it for you on your car window the night we went out to the desert or something. And I'm like, I guess that must have happened in the past, and we'll probably get a flash of that at some point. So then he tells her that, and so Liz is like, oh, snap, for real? And he's like, for real? Again, that's probably not the way they said it, but I gotta do whatever I can to make this stuff more interesting. And then Liz just comes right out and she's like, you killed my sister. And I'm like, oh, well, it didn't take you long to spoil that whole thing. I thought you were gonna go look for evidence. Guess not. I guess you just want to rattle that out now in the middle of the whole parking lot. And so he professes his love to Liz, and he tells Liz, I would never hurt someone you loved. He's like, I did lie, and I did see Rosa that night, but she caught me leaving this note for you, and then she was upset and started pushing me, and he's like, I could tell that she was high, and so I just took off, and I went home. And she's like, you didn't kill her? He's like, no, I went home, but I feel bad because I feel like I should have made sure she got home okay instead of leaving, and then she ends up dying that night. So Max is like, I've loved you every day of my life. Even while you were gone for those 10 years, I still loved you. Then Liz, being her unsympathetic self, is like, cool, everybody loves me. Isabel ends up going home to her husband, and because they're going to have their quality time where they're not role playing, because no kinky fuckery tonight for Noah. Then when Isabel gets there, she's upset, and so she confides in Noah and tells him, like, you know, Max has always been my person. I've always just felt so close to him, and now he's in love, and, you know, I'm realizing that I kind of lost him. And then Noah is like, you know, you didn't lose him and stuff. She's like, I feel like I did. And he's like, I know you care about his happiness. And she's like, yeah, but I think he's been unhappy for 10 years, and that's largely because of me. And so Noah is such a sweet husband. He's a really good actor, too. He just doesn't have enough scenes for me to truly have an opinion about him. But he does tell Isabel, like, I love you. Stop worrying about who's happy and who you're making happy, and let me worry about making you happy. And so it's sweet. And he set up her favorite movie, like Land Before Time or something, I think it was. And she's like, oh my gosh, how did you know? And he's like, Max told me. So see, you didn't lose him. Max called and said that you were having a rough night and that you might need some TLC. Look what I did for you. And he's like, I just want you to let me be your person. I was just like, oh, why are all the Isabel husband actors amazing? Like, it was a moment that was touching and you feel it. And so I'm like, okay, chemistry. And I actually ended up liking Isabel's character more when she wasn't around Max and Michael. It actually shows a really different side of her character to have her in that, and I did enjoy it. Okay, one thing I did want to say, like, this is my observation about this show, is it kind of feels like a weird spin-off episode of the originals and Vampire Diaries. Does anybody else feel that way? Like, it just really, and not because Nathan Parsons and the chick that plays Freya is on it, but it's just something about it. Like, the music is the same, the environment's the same. I don't know what it is, but it's like, have you ever read a book series and you read a book series from one author and then you start to, get almost bored of their style? It seems like because Julie Plec was a part of the Vampire Diaries and she was a part of the originals, I think that's what's making it seem so familiar. And so it seems like more of a spin-off than that show Legacies. And Legacies is a spin-off of the Vampire Diaries and the originals, but for some reason, this feels like more of a spin-off. There is a great scene between Kyle and Jesse Maines, where Kyle takes Jesse Maines, his dad's records of, like, I guess stuff he wrote while he was in the hospital dying of cancer, and he's like, here, my involvement with you is done. Read what my dad had, and maybe that'll lead you to some of your answers you want, but I know you weren't friends with my dad, so, like, deuces. Bro. Okay, I'm gonna mention something that you guys are probably gonna be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But if you're watching this, you probably like kind of the same stuff that I like. I'm going to assume that you like the stuff that I like. And so if you see this, then you will know that I read mostly every book in Sherilyn Kenyon's series, The Dark Hunters. And so one of the Dark Hunters, Acheron, and that was supposed to become a show too. I don't know what's happening with that. It was supposed to be being developed into a show. But Acheron, one of her characters, he can't handle Sprite. For whatever reason, he drinks Sprite, he gets drunk. And so there's a scene in this episode where Max is like at his house and he's on the phone calling people and he's like drunk dialing, but Max just cannot handle his nail polish remover. Because there's a nail polish remover bottle on the counter, and I'm like, he drank all that and still he's just, drunk dialing. So he goes outside and he's like freaking out. He's having a moment. He can't get a hold of Isabel. He can't get a hold of Michael. And so he goes outside. He's like angry and he pulls a Fern Gully moment out of his pocket. And if you watched the cartoon Fern Gully, like I watched the cartoon Fern Gully because it's one of my favorite movies, he like plunges his hands into the ground and the ground moves and the rolling blackout happens throughout Roswell. And I'm like, the hell kind of power is this? Is this an alien power? Because that don't make no sense. My hypothesis after this episode, Liz opened the episode with her exposition narration and talks about her hypothesis that Max killed her sister. Like, my hypothesis is that Liz is a very unsympathetic, unlikable protagonist with no redeeming traits as of right now. Stay tuned for episode 4's recap of The Passage. That is on Mondays on Fox. 9/8 Central, so I will get that one up as soon as I see it. And if you want me to review anything else, let me know. Remember, like, subscribe, comment, share, smoke signal, carrier pigeon, telegram, Morse code. Tell somebody that knew somebody that knows somebody and they should watch it. Do whatever you gotta do. Share this video. Leave a comment, press the bell so that you get notifications of uploads, and I will see you later because these lights are burning my retina. So I will talk to you later, peaches.